There we go. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome. It's nice to have folks here. I suspect we'll have a few more people trickle in over the hour. I know it's a nice steamy day out there for many of us, and leading into a holiday weekend, so we may have a smaller crew, but some great information here today. We're really excited to have Marcela joining us and to talk about our new some of our new tools for accessing data. And I'm Zoe Miller. It doesn't say my name. I should add my name to my square, but so I think most of you know me. I am the facilitator of the network, and I'm also I'm a consultant with Zoe Miller Strategies, and so I do a lot of engagement, and especially around transportation. So excited to be here today, and going to do just a very brief intro to what Moving Maine is and plug a couple things we have going on. And first, I wanted to do just a very brief housekeeping. We'd love to have you on camera if you're able to do that. I feel like it's energizing to be able to look at each other's faces, but we do ask you stay muted unless you're contributing. Please keep doing introductions in the chat, and if you want to add in what mode of transportation you've used today. I have to confess that I've mostly just used my feet to get around my house, but I'm looking forward to getting outside for a bit, for a walk. So just a few words about the Moving Maine Network and how what we try to uphold in all of our meetings and our communications is really to center equity and focusing on ensuring that folks have what they need to participate, and then that plays out in how we in the transportation access work that we do. And we like to share this graphic that shows, equality, moving from equality to equity, that giving everybody the same bicycle doesn't necessarily get people out riding. People need different things to be able to participate. And even, we're waiting on, perhaps Robert Wood Johnson will come back to us with a new graphic. I know Jess Maurer had reached out about representing that the folks were missing there, so showing an adaptive bicycle. And our core strategies for the Moving Maine Network are doing things like this, where we strengthen our connections to one another. And so that, when opportunities and needs come along, we know who to reach out to. We're also informing policy change, and I'll share a plug for that. We're working to support better coordination, and that's in, supporting local efforts, supporting regional efforts to coordinate. And we just had a webinar last week about the workforce transportation funding, and now we're supporting a couple of communities to look at how they can better coordinate with different folks to apply for funding there. And we like to amplify mobility stories, and so that's shining a light on what good mobility looks like, and also on what the challenges are and how they impact people. And so I'll pause there and just give a plug that if you have a story of something that's happening in your work, in your part of the state, we would love to hear from you and highlight that in our newsletter. So please do let us know about that. You can reach out to Heather or me, or both of us, at info@movingmaine.org. Also wanted to put a plug in that we have we'll be launching 2 policy work group conversations in September, and the first one of those is focused on expanded access to community and public transportation, and looking at volunteer transportation and ways to get more people rides who currently aren't served through the brokerage. The second work group is around increasing affordability of transportation, and that will focus a lot on how to get some free fare transit, and also looking at potentially a pilot of universal basic mobility, which is a way of hooking people up with flexible funds they can use that can help add to their transportation budget. So though that's what we have going on right now, and I will put a link in the chat to join those work groups. You can join both, you can join one. We're also looking for folks who want to help do some of the leadership on those. We'd love to have you. And those will culminate in legislation, potential legislation for the 2023 session, and also inform our other advocacy that we do as a network. So for today, we're all here to learn together, and our goals for these monthly sessions are to share some expertise. And so bringing folks in who can share expertise, resources, and we all also look to you all to share around the table. We also are hoping that these sessions move us to action on transportation solutions. So we'd love to see people come away from the sessions with ideas and connections that then they can turn into action with folks in their communities, and ultimately to build relationships. So again, it's really, I find, how nice is it when that, when an opportunity comes along or a problem comes along, that exactly who to call, and you've already met them and spoken with them, and you can pick up the phone or type an email, and you don't have to sort of scramble around for who you want to connect with. So with that, I will turn it over to Heather to introduce our first presenter and lead us through the rest of the session today.
Thanks, Zoe, and hi everybody. I'm Heather Drake. I work with Zoe on Moving Maine, so it's nice to see you all again this month for our second learning community opportunity. I'm excited to welcome Marcela Moreno, who is with the National Center for Applied Transit Technology. She is a senior program associate and will be sharing some tools that they have that could hopefully be helpful to you all. So Marcela, I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. I apologize in advance. My Zoom has been acting up this morning, so fingers crossed that this works. I will share my screen. Okay, is it working? Yes. Okay, awesome. So I'm not going to read off this entire screen, but I thought it was helpful. I have learning objectives. Hello, I'm Marcela Moreno. I'm the Senior Program Associate for the National Center of Applied Transit Technology, which is an FTA-funded technical assistance center, and it's funded by a cooperative agreement between the FTA and the Community Transportation Association of America. So we work with small urban, rural, and tribal transit agencies to provide technical assistance and replicable resources around emerging transit technologies, which can range from autonomous vehicles, which is like very long-term, far future Jetsons-like technology, to scheduling and dispatch software. We touch it all. So today I'm here to talk to you about our course, free GIS tools for transit analysis and map making, and a little bit of context about why we developed this course and kind of its history. Through our work with transit agencies, we noticed that some of the smaller agencies and nonprofits or other transportation providers didn't have access to paid GIS programs, or they were going through a municipal GIS coordinator that's juggling all of the other departments in the city, so that they were delayed in getting analyses back or developing quick maps like a route detour due to some construction. So we wanted to develop a course so that people could build skills in GIS and accomplish those really small and even more complicated projects on their own. So it's a little bit of professional development, a little bit of like tech skill building, So we're really excited about the course. The first time we offered it was back in February and January as a 2-part live online webinar. And we had about 30 participants, which was great. We navigated the challenges of having a hands-on workshop over the internet, but it worked out really well. So we held the workshop again at CTA's Expo in 2021. Where we could have a more traditional hands-on course with instructors. So some of the feedback that we got from our participants is that, they had no GIS experience. So learning effectively the basics that you learn in a GIS 101 class was a little overwhelming. And then for more advanced users that were using this as a refresher that, it was really easy, but it was a great refresher. So we thought about how we might address all of the different skill levels that are coming into this course, and thus the on-demand course was born. So really this is kind of a GIS 101 lens, but the course was developed and taught by a GIS instructor, but he is also a transportation planner. So everything is slanted towards transportation. A couple of notes: if you have your AICP or American Institute of Certified Planners certification, this course is worth 7 CMs. So it's a really great opportunity to knock out some of those credits that you need. And the course takes approximately 7 hours. Depending on your skills, you can pick and choose for a refresher on something that you want to learn more about, or you can go through the entire thing. So this course, I will move to the next slide. Like I said, is on demand, and you go through all of the different aspects of GIS, down from learning about scale, legends, good map design, to the very end analysis, which is a transit propensity analysis. It's done through YouTube videos with our instructor. There are some hands-on activities that walk you through, similar to a GIS textbook, step by step, holding your hand on how to do these different analyses, as well as written guides and discussion forums, which haven't really been used yet, but that is available. So you can talk to the TA, who is me, or fellow students that have similar questions, or you can ask advice for, I have this project coming up and I'm trying to think of the best way to present it, or, has anyone done this analysis before? That was one feature we wanted to include as well. So aside from, actually, let me roll back a little bit. The platform that we use is QGIS, which is a free GIS software. It's available for Windows and Mac. So it's both operating systems. It's available on the internet, and you can integrate with different free GIS softwares like Ride with GPS, and even some of Esri's products. ArcGIS Online has a free limited feature version, so you can create web maps, which are great for public viewing or anything that you'd really like to share. One thing that I'd like to note is we're seeking to hold more GIS seminars in the future with more advanced workshops. So we've been getting feedback from our students. So if anyone has any ideas of analyses that they'd like to undertake, we're more than welcome to hear those. One big one is understanding the new 2020 census information. So any ideas are ready to hear them. Registration is open on ncat.org, which is www.n-catt.org. And there's no fee to register. All of this is free because we are a technical assistance center. So please take advantage of it and share it with your networks as appropriate. And I wanted to do a little plug for our strategic technology technical assistance teams. We have ongoing technical assistance opportunities to work with small urban, rural, and tribal transit agencies on a technology goal. And one thing we've heard from a lot of our agencies is, you know, we don't have a specific technology idea in mind, and that is totally okay. The first phase of this process is working with an agency to understand what their needs are, what might be a challenge, and what might be an opportunity, and how technology can be leveraged as a tool to accomplish that goal. So it is totally okay to apply or call us with ideas that you have, and we're happy to brainstorm. And I think that's just about what I've got.
Great, thank you. Do folks have questions? You can feel free to enter them in the chat or raise your hand to come off mute and ask it out loud. For how many folks in the audience is this new information? Did you know about this tool or this is a resource? Raise hands, shake heads. All right, I see a couple no's, so good new information for some. Joe, do you have a question, Joe Austin?
No, I was just going to say it's new for me as well.
Great, good. I'm glad that it's helpful. And not to put folks on the spot, but how many of you think you might go check this out? Or at least talk to your groups about it? Awesome. Lots of hand raising. And I think it's great that it's on demand as well to like really increase the accessibility and opportunity. Sarah, do you have a question?
Yeah, Marcela, thanks so much. I'm always excited, like, thanks to Moving Maine for even helping us all navigate that these exist, and thanks for presenting. That's awesome. I just wondered the opportunity, or I guess both opportunities, they're probably right there. I haven't gone to the website to check, but like especially the technical assistance opportunity in terms of, is there a blurb or something that we could help folks share with folks, including that important piece of like, I have no idea how technology could even impact this need, but we do have these X, Y, and Z needs. I'd love to be able to share with communities too.
Yes, I can share the blurb and paste it into the chat.
Great, thanks, Sarah, and thanks for sharing that, Marcela. And it was also, we put a blurb in our most recent newsletter too, so hopefully folks saw that and can feel free to forward that on to their networks too. Any other questions? Go ahead.
And if
Zoe,
you
do you have
want, Heather, yeah, I was going to say, we can jump into the policy map piece, but I think they're connected. Like actually me talking about policy map may get people's wheels turning on support they would want from NCAT. So feel free as we go along, if you realize you have a question for Marcela, to come back to that. So I'm actually not an expert in the tool that I'm going to share now, but maybe more of like a excited new user of it. So we have the National Center for Mobility Management put out an opportunity for free subscriptions from mobility management groups to have a subscription to Policy Map. So what I'm going to do, and so naturally I immediately said, us, please, Moving Maine wants one. And so we were selected to have one, and I've just started to play around with what's there and what's possible. So I am going to screen share, and let's see if I can, oops, I might have, see, I'm going to move my screens around real quick. Hold on a second. So, and actually before, I'm just going to send this is I meant to send this earlier. So this is, I just sent the link for the policy work group. So FYI, as we're talking about policy map, that's how you get involved with our policy effort. So, So Policy Map is a tool that basically they have access to lots and lots of data. And so but I kind of think of it as like the fish, when I was a kid, we had all the Fisher Price toys, and it was like the Fisher Price telephone, and it was like the really basic telephone that anybody could understand how to use. And I kind of feel like that about Policy Map. You don't have to understand how to go to the data and extract it from the US Census website. It's here on the Policy Map tool for you to use. So one example is this this map that I put together that I'm actually going to, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Hold on one second. Okay, sorry. So this is a custom map that I can then share with all of you. So I'm going to drop it into the chat, and you can basically cruise around Maine and see where by census tract, where the percentage of housing units that have no vehicle. So you can scroll in and out, and you can click on the track. So for instance, the way this is set up, the darkest mean there is over 17.77% of households in that census tract that don't have access to a vehicle, which is kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. So you can click on the darker areas here and see what is that percentage. And so for instance, this one here that's in Kennebec County, and then you can see what the census tract is, what the amount is. So this map, I obviously was able to just send all of you and make available to all of you. With our subscription, we can get even more information on it, and we can make our own custom maps. So I'm going to actually switch over to let me go into the regular Policy Map website. So this is what it looks like. This is what we have access to as Moving Maine. And so we're able to go along these tabs and look at what's here. So obviously the transportation stuff is what I immediately go to first. But what's cool about it is you can create maps that have more than one layer. And so what they have on here for transportation data, they have the travel time to work, they have the mode of transportation, job and worker accessibility, vehicles per household, public transit. They have some interesting public transit data that I am looking forward to digging into more and understanding where it's coming from for them. They have location affordability, transportation infrastructure, and walkability. So they're basically working with a lot of other entities to get this data. And then they have staff who are analyzing the data. And so, for instance, they are using the National Walkability Index. And so you can look at this data, and then we could say, well, I'd actually rather see it. I don't want to see it by block group. I want to see it by, it's not letting me switch it. Well, this one might have it differently. As I said, I'm not yet an expert in this. So, but that just gives you a taste of what's here. So what I wanted to today say, yay, we have this resource, and to kind of put out to folks, first, if you are in the process of doing some kind of planning or grant application process and you would like to access this data, you can reach out to me and we can hook you up with it. Second, how would we like to use this as Moving Maine and to paint a picture of what access looks like and the impact lack of access has here in Maine. And so we, for instance, just thinking, looking at Marcela, we might say this, spending some time looking at this, we might say, oh, we'd really like to do some custom data for Maine around, could we find out for instance, going back to that vehicle access, we might say, okay, so in these really, the places that have a much darker shade here, what's going on? So we might say, we want to know, okay, so in this area, there's, in county, let's see which county this is. So over here in Washington County, we have several areas that show up as very dark, and we might say, we really want to understand, we want to help transit and transportation planning efforts in Washington County to understand like what's going on in those areas. And, this gives us very broad strokes that overall, 15% of households have zero vehicle access. Who are those households? Where are they? What's going on? What are the other demographics for those areas? Just as an example. So that is very, very high level. And so, yes, so Marcela just put into the chat that that part of their course covers creating your own data, and that we would be able to upload it into Policy Map and use them together. So that would be excellent. So I'm going to stop there and just curious if anybody has questions, suggestions for how they'd like to see us use this. And as I said, we could make a request to Policy Map to have some kind of training for us in Maine, custom support in Maine. It seems like there could be a nice connection there with what NCAT is offering. So any questions, reactions, suggestions? Yeah, Joe.
It raises all kinds of questions. Can you define the boundaries in that map anywhere you want? So for instance, we serve 5 towns. Can we build the boundary around those 5 towns to really understand the transportation issues there?
Yeah, actually, that's one of the things that is really cool about it is you can make a custom area. And so, often we have these areas that it's not a county, or it's part of one county and part of another county. And so absolutely, you can go in and draw those boundaries. And then you can also do custom reports. And again, this is stuff that I would help you with, because it's like Moving Maine got the subscription. So you and I could talk more about what your needs are. And then if I need tech support to help you get what you need, we can do that. But we could set up a custom area, and then you can run reports off of it, so you could get what the demographics are for that area, which to me is really exciting, because the mapping is part of it, but also I know, sometimes you want to know, like, what's the total population in these areas, and what is the makeup of it. And I consider myself to be somewhat tech savvy, but I still find it hard to use the census website and not be pulling my hair out.
And I guess I think you said this at the beginning, but that would be my follow-up question. Where's that data coming from, and how recent is that data? Is that the last census, or?
Yes, so they have the data that I was just showing was from the American Community Survey through 2020. They have a lot of sources of data. So they have 2020 census data, and with each source, and let's see, I'll pull it back up and show this to you. With each source, there's a little spot to click that gives you information about the source. So I don't know how easy it is to see that, but it pops up and tells you in more detail what that is. They've got sort of the nutshell version, the estimated percent, and then they have more detail, and then you can go to the data dictionary if you want even more.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and one thing, so what I was starting to say, there's this, if we click on this, so this is a zip code tabulation area. You can click on a table, and well, that's not very exciting because it's just 1 point, but you can click on trends, so you can see how it's trending over time and how it compares to other places. You can click on report and get a community profile. And so in the community profile, that's where you would get a whole other swath of data for the area that you've defined. Other questions or comments?
Part of our overall discussion and networking session that we hope to have with the remaining time is to think through, again, have you heard of this information before? Is it new? Do you think you'll take it back to your communities? How might you use it? Are there partners that you would need to enable you to use it? So think through some of those questions too. And go ahead.
With the raise grants from DOT, they used a graphic system too, and I was wondering how this compares to that. Do you have any idea?
I don't. I mean, I think I think there are a lot of tools out there, and what I think that what's different about Policy Map is that it lets you cross-reference between some different types of data that you might not be able to in other places. So for instance, I've used the location affordability index before, but I was on the website and looking just at that index and didn't have the ability to then create a layer that included rates of diabetes or some other health indicator. So I think that is somewhat the uniqueness of Policy Map. So I just threw these questions up that Heather was raising, and I guess I'll turn it back to you, Heather, to facilitate this part and see if we can get some kind of synergy going around how people are using data in their areas and what they'd like to see.
Yeah, so we'll open it up for discussion. And Marcela, I welcome you to add in too, if there are examples you have of folks that you've worked with, how they've used data and incorporate it into their work as well, maybe for some examples, if people in the room haven't been using data or mapping. So think through, how have you been using data or mapping? Who are you working with? What are some next steps perhaps that you might take based on what you've learned today and heard about? And I think importantly too, are there other resources or information that you need to engage in this work?
think I have two examples that might be, I guess, good fodder for thought. But we have a podcast called Next Stop Transit Tech, and one of the agencies that we featured was actually a council of governments in Northwest Indiana, and they undertook a pretty comprehensive bus stop inventory and collected the GPS points of all of the bus stops in the region, which is like a huge effort. But with the information they collected on bus stops, they were able to determine whether or not someone was able to access it, holding it up to the standards of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So was there a sidewalk connection? Was it an accessible sidewalk? And it provided some additional information that just helps with trip finding for riders. Like, is there a shelter there? And for their own internal purposes, they were able to report out to the different transit agencies whether or not like a bus stop sign was there, because those things can get taken out by cars pretty easily. So it was an opportunity for that Council of Governments to help coordinate all of these different providers, as well as provide information that was valuable for them to plan in the future. Whether that was just sharing out information on accessibility, for bus and bus facility grant purposes, to know where, we have 50 bus stops that need ADA access. So like, let's apply to get those up to code. And there are like a couple of tools, and I think they're paid, but you could probably also do it on like Google Forms or something. But ArcGIS has a collector app. So all you do is download it on your phone, and you're able to collect the GPS points just based on your cell service or Wi-Fi, which is like really cool. So that's one really cool example. I'll link to the episode if y'all want to listen.
I love that, Marcela. That's really interesting. And so a feature, so, I gave everyone the link to that first map that I showed on Policy Map. And that's something that's, we could do with any map that we custom set up. So that example got my wheels turning around making it publicly available. And obviously there's other ways to embed it that are probably more sophisticated than just sharing the link out of Policy Map. But we do have a lot of data in Maine on our bus stops. And so I think that's one question I have is, if there's some transit data in there already, but it's more about riders. It's more like from the National Household Transportation Survey. So it's more like people self-reporting, but I think it would be really interesting to cross-reference indicators in there with our own local bus stop data. So that's something to think about.
So can I add a random thought about?
Go for it.
Okay,
Yeah.
are you trying?
Yeah.
Well, so I love this example that you offered, Marcela, and so I was because Maine DOT doesn't they don't govern all of our transit agencies across the state, or I don't know if that's the right term. Sorry, Ryan, I'm getting that wrong. But like with our ADA transition plan, it's acknowledged that DOT doesn't have the capacity or the sort of agency to do the full assessment. And this may be sort of dated. I also may be talking out my elbow about that too. So feel free to correct me, anybody. But I just know there's sort of this gap, right? A data gap between our various transportation forms, transit forms, and accessibility to stop data. And so it just, I could imagine DOT being able to be helpful with local communities offering, or, Moving Maine offering, connecting communities with these resources, but then being able to put together the full map and actually meet that federal sort of ask, right? That we have done that full assessment across the state.
I would just add to, if I can, I think it would be, I know I've found it challenging to find data on affordable housing GIS data. And we've at various times put together data on a GIS layer, but I think it kind of gets lost or not updated. And it seems like, again, like what you're saying, Sarah, like I think having like the connection of these layers in one place would be really helpful, just even with day-to-day decisions and development review that local communities have to do.
Yeah, I think those are great points. And one thing I just want to mention is that so anybody can go to Policy Map and take a look around at what's there. And then you'll probably get to a point where there's something where it says, for more detail, you need to be a member. So I would encourage you all to spend some time seeing what's there. And then if you get intrigued about something you want to, you want to get to the member level, reach out to me and we can talk.
Zoe, do you know what the pricing is for it?
I don't know. And I don't know that that's something that they publicize, because and my guess is it's sort of depends on the level of membership. And I do know that when we had the overview about it, that they were saying, the folks from the National Center for Mobility Management, which is funded by the Federal Transit Administration, were saying, please tell us how you're using it, use it, tell us how you're using it, tell us what it's helping with, because that way there's potential that they could continue to fund mobility management projects to continue to have access. And I guess one other thing I just want to say to add to that is that if you are somebody who is, you're like, oh man, I think I could help with this. I would love that. Basically what our agreement is that our policy and advocacy work group will have access to it. So that's sort of maybe like a little incentive to join our policy and advocacy work group and to help with some of the number crunching there and making it accessible to our members. Because, as I like to say, I mean, the Moving Maine Network, it's us, it's the people who show up and participate. And so if you have thoughts of how we can make this valuable to transportation access in Maine, like come on board and help with it. We'd love to have you.
I want to have one more question for Marcela, which is, it occurred to me, do you have examples of, like, is it more traditional transit agencies, sort of fixed route folks who use your systems? Is it volunteer driver networks? Is it, sort of what the breadth of examples are, the folks using the services?
As far as the course, I think we've mostly had like planners and general managers sign up from transit agencies, which have like ranged from small agencies and like community action groups to a sign up for like San Francisco Muni, which was like a little bit surprising because I imagine they have a huge GIS team. And then we've seen some state DOTs as well. Yeah, because the course is really designed for someone who has no background in GIS, but is working in transit. And when we worked with our course designers, we wanted to make sure that it was still relevant to our audience, which is small, urban, rural, and tribal transit agencies. So yeah, I would probably just say planners, people working in operations, and GMs are the primary audience. I've seen some students also every so often. So just people who have a general interest in GIS. I think one of my favorite things about the course is you're like gaining a technical skill that is of value to the transit agency or the agency that you work for, but also personally, you get to pick up a new skill and throw it on your resume and be like, hey, I know how to do these things. I know how to use QGIS. And I think also, if you are a user of like Esri's ArcMap program, that it's a little bit easier to make the one-for-one transfer just because a lot of the verbiage is the same. And same thing, like if you learn QGIS and later you want to pick up ArcMap, I think it's maybe a little more of a smoother transition because the theories and the concepts are there. It's just figuring out which button is the right one.
Thanks, Sarah, for that question, and Marcela for answering. And we also have in the chat, Mireille shared that this is new information for her, and she will be sharing it with the community transportation leader she works with, especially as someone with a disability. She's concerned about data and safety when outside, so looking at using data from a safety perspective too. Other thoughts or questions folks have on either these tools themselves or ways that you might take it back to your organizations? Ken, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the tools that I use a lot is the information provided by the TRB, the Transportation Research Board. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's they have committee after committee after committee on every transportation subject, and they have this great library called TRID, T-R-I-D. And I hadn't heard of it, and I still haven't been able to figure out how to use all the tools they have, but they research and investigate almost every aspect of transportation. And they're a great source of information about what other people are doing. And I wanted to throw this subtle distraction in the chat box, but that's another resource, and I don't know who uses it or not, but it is federally funded through the US DOT. It's called TRB, Transportation Research Board.
Great, thank you for sharing that. And if others have data sources or mapping tools that you use, please feel free to enter them into the chat or come off mute. We've got a question from Joe. She's curious whether the data gained from the community hospital needs assessments could be linked with transit needs this way. So for folks who aren't familiar with that, we do the community health needs assessments are done, and they were released, I think, just last month, or maybe it was earlier this month. So that's a good thought, and I think they could be. Definitely. I believe healthcare systems right now are working on their plans using the assessments. So I think that's the next step at this minute, but they're publicly accessible, so anyone should be able to reference them. I don't know if others have thoughts on that they want to contribute. Quiet group this afternoon. Marcela also shared that the Urban Institute has an interesting spatial equity tool where you can see any spatial disparities based on ACS data for spatial data. So she put the link in there. Another good resource, and I'll share a plug too. I wear another hat with the Maine Public Health Association, and we are in the process of developing a webinar probably for early mid-November that will be on data and equity and accessing data. So making sure that you have these tools and these resources, but you want to make sure that people can equitably access them and know how to use them as well. So it's not always intuitive on how to use data, and it can be really confusing, especially as there's lots of different data sets out there. So again, why it's super helpful to have groups like Marcela's who can walk us through how to use it and apply it to our work.
I think one thing about the course that I haven't seen yet, but I would like to, is we haven't seen a lot of transportation advocates sign up for the course, but it is an opportunity for groups to learn how to collect information and crunch it on their own. So I guess another really interesting data effort is in Atlanta, Georgia, where I grew up and went to college. There's this group called MARTA Army that was started by a PhD student that went to Georgia Tech. And it was just this grassroots group that was advocating for better bus service, all that jazz. And recently they, I guess along the same lines, helped complete a bus stop census so that MARTA could collect all of the information on their hundreds of stops. And it was a really interesting example of citizen science, which is something that the environmental movement really pioneered, where advocates collect information that can be hard to gather for governments just because of limited staff capacity. And it's a really interesting partnership so that advocates can learn more about what they're advocating for and also support an organization in improving their efforts. So through that, MARTA was able to get a better picture of where their bus stops needed to be improved.
Thank you. That's another really great example. And Ken just put the data source he mentioned into the chat as well if folks want to access that. Got a few more minutes left. Any final thoughts, questions you want to add? And thank you, Marcela, for putting that in the chat too. I'll turn it back over to you, Zoe.
Thank you, Heather. Yeah, my wheels are definitely turning in terms of how we might want to do our own subgroup do a training, because we have, as we shared earlier, we have this work going around policy and advocacy, and I think and telling stories. So data is really great with that. So Marcela, I suspect you will be hearing from us. Thank you so much for being here today and getting us thinking and providing these different examples. They're really interesting. So we will be coming back together to do another learning community in September, and we have been throwing around a few ideas. So we'd love to hear yours, and whether it's for the topic or if it's something that you would like to, sort of the process wise. I think the idea again is that we're here to create community, build relationships, and share knowledge and expertise. So any thoughts on how we can amplify or expand on that would be great. I hope you all have a safe and fun, or at least restful weekend, and we look forward to talking to you soon. And please do consider signing up for one of the policy work groups. So thanks for all for being here today. Thank you, Heather, for moderating. Take care.
Yes, and thank you, Marcela, too. Thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.